If you are based in the UK and would like to enjoy freshly batch roasted coffee delivered to your door, visit vitalcoffee.co.uk and use the coupon code Mr. Freaky Story to get 10% off from all products. I will leave a link in the description below. A little over a month ago, my wife Sam received an urgent phone call from her mother. Apparently, her father had an accident at work and had suffered some injuries. Sam's father was an exceptionally large man who gave off an extremely intimidating aura. For most of his life, he had worked in steel processing plants. To me, he always seemed like the kind of guy who would say, "If you aren't getting your hands dirty, then are you even working?" According to her mother, one of the pallets of steel had buckled and come crashing down. Some smaller shards of metal flew and struck her father in the arm and leg. He had been taken to the hospital and was forced to remain there for a few days. Sam and I lived a few states away from her parents, so finding time to visit was challenging. We only barely managed to visit during the holidays, and sometimes not even then. However, the moment Sam heard her father had been injured, she immediately dropped everything and made travel arrangements. I wanted to go with her, but my work rarely gives me time off. Even during these trying times, they seem to operate under the mentality of if you don't wish to work, we'll find someone who will. To say I was livid was an understatement, but I just bit my tongue and headed home. Sam assured me it would be fine and that I shouldn't worry myself. Still, I felt terrible as she left for the airport about a week after receiving the news. Meanwhile, all I could do was work and try my best not to worry. Sam did her best to update me throughout her travel. She arrived later in the evening and told me she had made it to her parents' house around midnight. Over the next few days, she kept me updated of her father's condition. The shards had been removed, and he was just spending time healing. He was scheduled to be discharged from the hospital after only a few days of observation. Meanwhile, Sam was doing her best to help her mother around the house while they waited for him to come home. During this time, my job seemed to pile on project after project. I could clearly see myself turning into some sort of workforce zombie. Before I knew it, nearly a week and a half had passed since Sam left. I checked my phone and looked at the calendar. She would be coming home the following day. She told me that since the flights were such short notice, she would be arriving very late in the evening. She said she would just grab a cab home and that I'd see her in the morning. I wanted to stay awake for her arrival, but as soon as I got home from work, I fell exhaustedly onto the bed. The next thing I knew, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I cracked open my eyes, excited to see Sam sleeping next to me. But she wasn't there. I grabbed my phone to check for messages. Perhaps a flight had been delayed and she'd be arriving today or tomorrow instead. but I had received no new messages since the previous night. I got out of bed and was in the middle of sending her a text, asking if she was all right, when I was nearly startled out of my skin by someone standing in my kitchen. I turned on the light, and after a few seconds, I recognized Sam, holding a cup of coffee. I quickly walked over and embraced her, telling her how glad I was that she made it home safely. She returned a faint smile and set her mug down. I asked her what time she made it in, and she said only a couple of hours ago, but that she didn't want to disturb me while I slept. I thought this was odd, as she probably knew better than anyone how heavy a sleeper I am. She let out a soft sigh before telling me that she was starting to feel pretty tired herself. I told her once again that I was glad she was back, but I had to get ready for work. I quickly got changed and grabbed my bag. That's when I noticed another oddity. The mug she had set down was entirely spotless. It was as if no liquid had ever been poured into it. Normally, there should be some coffee stains inside. Perhaps she had just rinsed it out, I thought, and I continued out of the door. After a long day at work, I returned home in the evening. I felt as though I wasn't alone in the living room, though I didn't immediately see anyone. As my eyes drifted around, I noticed Sam sitting on the couch and staring at the TV. I asked her what she was doing. She just returned a faint smile and told me that she was watching the news. And when I glanced over at the black TV screen, I asked if she was feeling all right. She just shook her head, saying she was fine. I was far too exhausted to press further. I told her I would jump in the shower and then head to bed early. She said she'd come to bed later. As I headed down the hallway, I glanced back at Sam, who seemed to resume watching the black TV screen. I took a very long shower, and when I finished, I opened the door to the bathroom. I nearly jumped back at the sight of Sam standing mere inches away. I asked her, exasperated, what she was doing. She just smiled and said she had to use the bathroom. Clutching my chest, I told her she should have just knocked. She chalked it up to forgetfulness. After trading positions with her, I got changed and climbed into bed. I couldn't help but wonder if something had happened to her while visiting her parents. She had been acting strange ever since returning home. I tried to rationalize it as exhaustion from travel, or perhaps the stress of dealing with her father. The next couple of days passed, filled with more strange behavior from Sam. I'd find her staring off into space, or lingering in odd places throughout the house. One day, I found her standing in the closet, as if deciding what to wear, but she had been there for an extended time. However, the creepiest thing happened one night around 3 a.m. I had been startled awake by a noise. Sam wasn't in bed. I called out to her, but received no response. I searched the house, checking every room, but I was coming up empty-handed. A pang of worry formed in my stomach as I absent-mindedly glanced out of the window. Someone was standing in the backyard. As I drew closer, I realized it was Sam, standing in the center of the yard. She was looking up at the sky and muttering something. I rushed to her and asked what she was doing. She almost snapped to her senses, telling me she was just talking to herself. I quietly guided her back inside and got her to bed. Right up until I drifted off, I worried something was seriously wrong with her and considered calling a professional for help. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, I entered the kitchen and saw Sam standing next to the window, staring out at the backyard. I asked if she was all right. She just nodded. Just before leaving, I realized I had forgotten my phone on the nightstand. I rushed back to get it and noticed a missed call. When I checked the voicemail, I learnt it was from the hospital, calling about my wife. Naturally confused, I called back and asked about Sam. They informed me that she had been in an accident and hospitalized for the past week. I was beyond confused and insisted there must be a mistake. They transferred me to Sam's hospital room, where I heard her voice over the receiver. A cold sweat broke out across my body. She explained that she had been in a car accident on the way home from the airport. She didn't remember much, aside from landing and hailing a cab. I asked her why I hadn't been contacted sooner. She told me that her purse and phone, with all of her identification, had gone missing during the accident. She had been in and out of consciousness for most of the week. That's when I felt my pulse quicken as she told me something else. Someone had appeared on the dark road. The cab driver swerved to avoid them and crashed into a ditch. She could feel herself fading in and out of consciousness, but right before, she watched as a figure stood over her. She described it as resembling an alien. Smooth grey skin with a wet-like appearance, a nearly featureless face with two small slits for eyes, and pinpoints for nostrils. She stifled a slight chuckle, calling it a product of her accident. I wanted to laugh, but my throat was bone dry. She told me the doctors were clearing her for release the next day, and that I could pick her up. I apologized for not being at her side, but she said it wasn't my fault. I had no way of knowing where she was. She said she needed rest, but was excited to see me tomorrow. I agreed and hung up, gripping the phone tightly, trying to stop my body from shaking. If Sam was in the hospital, then who had been in my living room? I opened the bedroom door and walked down the hallway. A cool breeze brushed against me as I noticed the living room window was open. The same window where the Sam who had been here all week had been standing. I don't know who or what had been impersonating my wife, but I just hope to God that it never comes back.